We're talking with Nelson Layag from CompassPoint Nonprofit Services. Nelson, tell us a little bit about the process you're going through at CompassPoint with trying to manage all the content you create and get it out there. How does that happen? How does that decision making happen?
Well, last year what we did was look at what we wanted to do around communications and marketing and these pieces, and we actually started working with Holly at Lightbox Collaborative on figuring that out. And one of the things that we realized is that we needed a little bit more, or actually a lot more structure in the organization around that. And one of the things that we knew is that it wasn't absent of any ideas or good thinking around strategy and communications. Part of it is just the ability to operationalize those. And part of it is also understanding what we can't do. What don't we have the capacity to do, or the time or the money. What we aren't sure whether we'll get the return on that investment on doing something. So what we decided to do as far as structure-wise is create a team-based approach. And so there's 4 members of our team who act as basically our communication staff, although none of us hold that title.
So who are the members of the team?
It's our executive director, Jean Bell. It's me. And it's Christina Chan, who does a lot of our grants and grant writing, who's actually used to be one of the authors of our newsletter, which we started in the 90s, which we stopped doing a while ago. So she's a writer in essence. And then our IT guy who manages our web and technology.
And so you're the projects director, so you're the program person.
Yeah, and I basically I can't, it's hard for me to say I lead that group because it's basically an incredibly collaborative effort. And that's part of the challenge too, because all of us have other jobs within the organization, none of us and so it's sort of carves out that piece. Actually, it's a double-edged sword, is that because we work in all these different areas and touch a lot of things, Jean being the executive director and Christina working with grants, we know a lot what's going on with the organization. So that helps us look at identifying where the gaps might be in communications, where the interesting things are happening.
Right.
So again,
so what do the 4 of you do together then to make decisions about how you communicate as an organization?
Right. So we meet regularly. We set a calendar every 2 weeks. We do meet. And part of that meeting is either talking about something that's current, or, for instance, we started rolling out a weekly newsletter. We had stopped doing newsletters. We were kind of doing like the wild, wild west of communications, just, things. They were sending things to our IT guys, say, blast this out, and there was no control over that. And we knew that had to stop. That was not respectful for our community. We didn't think it was that effective either. So those combined actually tells you stop doing that. And one of the things that we decided to do was create a very short, informative weekly newsletter that included not just our stuff but things in the community. And so one of our meetings, we would have a discussion around what that would look like, what's the process, what's the timeline, and again goes into sort of curating how do we make decision what gets in there, because we held the line. There's only going to be 4 items in that. It's weekly. 4 items, that's it. So what are the 4 items that go in there?
And how far out are you making those decisions? So if you met this week, what issue of the newsletter would you be talking about?
The next week.
Okay.
So basically
so
we're a week out.
it's still pretty timely.
It's timely. It's a week out. And we're flexible too, because sometimes some things come up and we're like, should we replace this item with this? And we can make those decisions. And that has to happen via email. The other thing is we give ourselves a little bit of a break, right? So that's why I say, it's hard to say any of us really lead the process. One of the things that we say is there's 4 of us, and at any given time, one of us is going to be out of touch to make a really clear decision. So, for instance, I'm at this conference, and Jean's actually down the street at another conference, and so if a decision has to be made and the newsletter has to go out, it's okay that Christina makes that decision.
Okay, good. So everyone is empowered when everybody else is out.
Yeah,
Great.
But we try to stay in touch. There's sort of a commitment to sort of return each other's emails and make a comment, but at the same time, and every once in a while, Jean might be directive and say, Christina, you need to usher this. I think this is what we should do. But again, it's one of those things where we're going to be flexible with that.
Right.
We have to be.
Now, you all are also sort of struggling with how to do an editorial calendar and getting the right tool that's going to work and managing that information. Tell us a little bit about that process for you.
Yeah, so I think there's one piece that we needed to get handle on. So last year what we did was I started calendaring all the things that I knew was going out via email or social media or print, especially email. And one of the things that we noticed were there's so many things needing to go out at the same time. And so we started putting those in a calendar, and what we realized was the calendar format was actually tough for us to manage. We weren't sure, I don't know what it was, but part of it was, what do we look, is the calendar pieces project-based or media-based, that type of thing. And so what Holly helped us do is develop an Excel spreadsheet, which looks like it'll be much more useful for us to look at any given month what's supposed to be going out. So it's not...
So what are your rows and your columns in the spreadsheet then?
So the rows are the different media, print,
the communications channels,
the different channels, yeah, email, personal, one-to-one, all these different pieces. And what's that? And then the columns are either the campaign or the project. And one of the things that we have developed is what we call the communications arc of a project or a program. In essence, there are these communication opportunities that we throughout a program that we might want to look at. And what we've always been actually pretty good and active is on the front end of the arc, announcing something starting, getting people enrolled, or getting some attention. On the other end of the arc, sharing learnings. If there was a graduation, we had this great program with next generation leaders of color who graduated. It was such a powerful graduation, yet we did nothing on the back end to sort of talk about what we learned, what they wanted to say about their experiences. Nothing. Okay, very little. Not nothing. So that helps us then timeline that on this Excel spreadsheet.
Now, do you have a sheet per month?
Yeah, so the count, which I'll share with you, is an Excel spreadsheet, and each tab is actually a month. So, and so again, it's not perfect, and we're testing it out. At the same time, it seems like it'll be much more helpful for us to timeline out further, especially as we look. The arc of the communications arc idea helps us think out farther ahead, because some of these projects are 18 months long.
Right.
And some of the activities we need to lead up to, let's say creating video interviews of participants, that activity probably has to start earlier. Recruiting who those folks are, getting permissions, those types of things.
Right.
So,
well, what else can you tell us that you've learned from this whole process so far?
Well, what we've learned is that it's a different way of working. And earlier in your session, people said start earlier. And that's when recently at a staff meeting, we sort of talked about communications, and I asked a couple of folks what we started doing is the communications team. We assign an account manager for each project, kind of an account, I don't even know what we call them, but basically it's a lead person, and we walk through this arc of a project and the timeline and what activities, and create sort of a mini communications plan. And I recruited a couple of staff who went through that process, and one of the things they say is it makes them think about communications in a much more complete way, and makes them do stuff that they're supposed to do.
Right.
And the other thing is that it makes them think they have to start earlier on a lot of things. And so that was 2 lessons for us too, is that everything just it makes us start earlier and actually be a lot more proactive versus reactive or in crisis mode.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to get out of. And we're still trying to catch up. So
wonderful, Nelson. Thanks so much for sharing your story.
Sure. Thank you.